Okay, don't forget to get your tickets for the 15th. Greg updated the poster, and I don't know about the picture of me, but Scarlett Martin is there, Sarah C. and Dr. Patrick Phillips is there, and I talked to Dr. Phillips yesterday, and I'll put that up soon. And Greg, of course, will be there, and I'll be there, and it'll be great. So get your tickets soon. And just a reminder, let's get started. The Ottawa Citizen is reporting. This is a meme in real life. I thought this was a hilarious meme, and it's real, so it's even better. Ottawa Citizen is reporting Prime Minister's official residence closed following discovery of walls full of dead rodents. Yeah. You won't believe who actually lives in the house either, right? Jeepers creepers. So yeah, the Prime Minister's house, 24 Sussex Drive, should be probably torn down and rebuilt, and it could be real nice, and it could be 24 Sussex Drive again. So I don't know. I don't think anybody. It's not like the White House, is it? It wasn't Sir John A. Macdonald's house or any of, how many prime ministers live there? Stephen Harper lived there, but who else? How would you go about building a prime minister's house? I don't know. You could just make it the cottage that he's been at, that he spent millions of dollars on, right? Do that one. Wall Street Silver. Okay, let's talk about money and BRICS and aggression and power. Okay, Finland. Wall Street Silver says Finland officially becomes a member of NATO, doubling the military alliance's border with Russia. So everybody's kind of celebrating. They're saying, ha, 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 take that, Russia. Finland's joined NATO, and now your border with a NATO country is increased by, it's doubled. So ha, 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 Ukraine won. And I think that it's interesting because it seems like it doesn't matter what they do. Russia hasn't really tried hard. They've done things, they've taken certain areas, but it's not like they've opened up the floodgates and they're really looking at ending this. It seems like they're just fine with dragging this out. They're kind of lackadaisically moving people around, as far as I understand it. It doesn't look like they're looking at ending this ASAP. And so I think that they understand that BRICS is really where the power lies. If you can't fund your war, if you can't fund your war, you can't send troops, you can't do anything. And apparently, and I'll show you this as well, the Canadian government isn't paying for the military over there's food. And I mean, if they're not there on an official thing, then I'm glad they're not. But it seems strange. Here is just a really short excerpt from a 10-minute video. It's all probably worth watching, talking about how the US dollar is a debt currency, and the debt currency's liquidity is people, you and me. Our jobs, the money that we make goes into the banking system, and that's the liquidity, okay? And then that liquidity gets snapped up and used and so on and so forth because of fractal banking, right? They only need to keep 10% of it. And now it's all changed, he says. But he makes some good points. And then I'll fast forward to the end to tell you his conclusion. Here we go.
China and Japan that hold U.S. debt. Number 3 is in America, we are a debt-based society. We are the liquidity. Your hard-earned money in America. So every time a construction worker goes to work, gets his paycheck, here's how the system works. That construction worker takes their money and puts their $2,000 every 2 weeks into the banking system. That $2,000 now, as of 2020, can be lent out 100%. Before 2020, we had fractional reserves. They still only had to keep 10%. But since 2020, when that construction worker puts their $2,000 hard-earned money into the bank, 100% of their money can be lent to the next person. So when you're standing in line at the bank to deposit your check, 100% of the people in that line is debt. There's no actual money in the system. Now you're probably like, why? Well, 1971, we detached from the gold standard. The American dollar has nothing backing it. Here's where the rub comes in. We had dominance. We had power because all oil was traded in U.S. dollars since 1974 with the Petro deal, where we promised arms and protection to the Saudis for trading all oil in U.S. dollars. Well, as you sit right now, as you're worried about shit that doesn't matter, all countries are working to de-dollarize, specifically China and Russia. China went into India and created a peace deal that we couldn't do. China and Russia are working together to create their own currency. And most countries are done with the dollar dominance. Here's why. Is when we raise interest rates, it destroys all other economies because we are the dominant currency. So let's put ourselves in other people's shoes as Americans.
Okay, so he starts talking about the impact in other countries. Fair enough. Why would other countries want to de-dollarize? And I've explained this before. The United States projects power by saying, we're going to lend you money. You owe us money back. You can pay us back in US dollars. How do you get US dollars? Glad you asked, right? And then now they're on a track of having to produce something that the United States wants so they can make US dollars to pay off US debts. If they can buy oil in their currency, they can say, F you, the United States. I'm going to do what I want because I'm not indebted to you. I'm not a slave to you, right? So that's part of the crux of the power. And at the end of this, he ties it all together. I'm just going to fast forward and cue it up. Hold on. So remember the beginning of this little video here. He said that people, you and me, are the liquidity in the system. They've run out of people in the system. It's a Ponzi scheme, right? And so it's going to crash unless they get an injection of new liquidity, new people in the system. And so they're going to onboard a whole other continent. And that's his thing. He's saying that Kamala Harris is going to bring the digital economy to Africa, and that's how possibly they're gonna solve this. But anyway, here's the digital currency and his idea on this.
Economy is large and growing. Within the next 2 years, for example, the forecast is that 1 in 6 of the world's internet users will be right here on this continent.
1 in 6 internet users will be in that continent. No wonder they're there. Liquidity. Get everybody in the system. CBDCs are coming, central bank digital currencies. Every central bank will have a central bank digital currency. There will be a new infrastructure of the financial system, blockchain technology. Elizabeth Warren says cryptocurrency is a fraud. Jamie Dimon says cryptocurrency is a fraud. But Jamie Dimon says blockchain is here to stay. Understand how to decipher their words. Understand what they're saying. Know the game so you can't be played. There will never be an opportunity like this in our living history during the biggest shift in financial wealth, the biggest shift in transformational wealth from the baby boomers down to the next generation, and a switch in a monetary system, Web 2.0 to Web 3.0, industrial to technical. I can only present facts, figures, numbers, logic to you and what's actually happening in our financial system. Our vice president is in Africa, in the largest continent in the world, working to get financial inclusion in the private and public sector together to get all the liquidity running back through the system. They need liquidity. People and their hard-earned money are the liquidity. I'll leave you with this nugget. Ripple expands into Africa, partnering with MSF Africa to bring the...
People were saying Ripple is the approved because it's liquidity on demand. Ripple represents liquidity on demand. So they're trying to onboard Africa. They're trying to make a central bank digital currency and basically one single system, the money of the internet, and thereby the rest of the world single. And then they get all that liquidity, right? And control, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that there's more going on here than a hot proxy war between Ukraine, United States, and Russia, right? And Wall Street Silver says, weaponizing the US dollar and SWIFT has consequences. This trend will continue, more countries to follow. Bitcoin Magazine is reporting just in China's yuan has replaced the US dollar as the most traded currency in Russia. Bloomberg. So there you go. There's that. That's pretty interesting, because if they can exchange in their own currency, then the US doesn't have even the liquidity they had, right? If everybody dumps the US dollar, the liquidity collapses. They don't have Africa on board yet. If this happens before they can roll out their fix, like injecting the liquidity of onboarding whole other continents to their system, then it crashes. And I think Russia knows this. I think maybe somewhere Biden knows this. How does that apply to Canada, right? Here is Miss, and CBC News is reporting Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland's budget is being billed as striking a balance between green investments, helping the vulnerable, and keeping spending under control. Only an upside-down liberal world does a $40 billion deficit equate to keeping spending under control. Why not 43 billion? Pierre Poilievre says Trudeau's $60 billion in brand new spending measures, which equals $4,200 per family, will keep inflation and interest rates higher than they have to be. Bring home low prices by cutting waste and capping spending to end inflationary deficits. The whole system is a mess. You can begin to fix it, but the whole system is not doing well, I don't think, right? Frank Stonick, says, why aren't we ringing the alarm bells about the shape Canada's in? Great question, Frank. Most Canadians know, this is a National Post article, most Canadians know that our country is in bad shape. A poll carried out for the National Post earlier this year showed that nearly 70% of Canadians agree with the statement. It feels like everything is broken in this country right now. Any bartender or cabbie could have told you the same thing, but is anyone in Ottawa listening? Last Tuesday, the federal government brought in another budget deficit expected to be more than $40 billion, which is higher than originally projected. The government also announced higher than expected deficits for the next 5 years, and said that our debt to GDP ratio will continue to rise, which is counter to an anchor they set last time. We will not do this, and they did it. Our national debt has turned into a runaway freight train, but no one's waving a red flag or sounding the alarm. What's more, the budget didn't tackle some of the fundamental roadblocks that are hampering Canadian economic productivity and growth. I scroll down a little bit. In the past year or so, skyrocketing inflation has eaten away at the stagnant wages of many Canadians while driving up the cost of staples like food and fuel. The end result is that living standards of most Canadians keep eroding. Our tax system, meanwhile, is tilted in favor of the rich and special interest, which is one of the main reasons why wealth is increasingly concentrated in the hands of the few. To make matters worse, the tax form that Canadians fill out this April has gotten even longer and more complex, with the addition of new tax credits and deductions, as well as new rules governing everything from interest deductibility to the sale of residential real estate. If we all know these are some of the more major problems facing our country, then why aren't we talking about them? These problems, everything from our overcomplicated and unfair tax system to our soaring national debt, should be at the top of our agenda when it comes to issues being debated in Parliament, but they've been strangely swept under the carpet, right? Drag queens are more in vogue to discuss these days, unfortunately. Here's Chrystia Freeland, out of touch 17 hours ago. This is yesterday afternoon. In Toronto today, she says, talking about how Budget 23 will help create great careers and make Canada the very best place in the world for businesses to invest. Thank you, Toronto Arbot, for the excellent conversation about how we grow Canada's economy. They don't see the problem. Frank Stronach is ringing alarm bells, and Chrystia Freeland, the Rhodes Scholar reporter, who's the finance minister, is patting herself on the back. Right? She doesn't see the danger, and obviously, because she's an amateur, she wouldn't see the danger, right? Obviously. Apparently, Russia has taken the UN presidency, and this is not an April Fool's joke. So I saw this on April 1st, and I think I kind of dismiss a lot of things on April 1st. I certainly dismiss this on April 1st. Today, Russia assumed the functions of UN Security Council president for the month of April. It's a reason to be optimistic for those who uphold international law and not rules-based international order, where selected Western countries set the rules and others have to obey. So it's very interesting. 2 of 3, he says, in my view, the doll in the video is a symbol of our presidency. Like our country, it's resistant to sanctions and shocks, never lets to be knocked down, always keeps upright and turns its back to those who try to do us harm, finding other partners. Watch, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, they're taking the presidency, and they're saying, and apparently this is a thing that was scheduled and is going ahead. I don't have anything to report. It's the 4th day of April today, so I don't have anything to report. I haven't heard they've done anything. But it seems interesting that they're specifically saying that they're going to deal with certain things. Who knows? Here is the researcher, and this is supplemental reading. I haven't read through this yet, but I plan to. He says, read the entire thread. There is no mistake. This is intentional. The installed Biden regime has given our tax system over to the OECD, an organization that was created to bring down the U.S. in order to transition to global technocratic governance. Not only must the OECD be defunded, but everyone in the Biden regime that has a hand in this effort must be arrested for treason, including the patsy Janet Yellen. Why do you think they're going scorched earth on President Trump? He stood in their way, and he still stands in their way. He's planning on running for 2024, and they're not sure they can beat him, right? So that's interesting. And so it's a dense read and beyond the scope of today's show. But I think that it's interesting in the backdrop of BRICS, the Ukraine war, and all of the other things that are happening. It's very concerning. So something to be aware of, something to maybe have a read through if you've got some time. Link should be in the description. Fingers crossed. Good Ray says, or this is Rex Murphy actually, it says Trudeau's carbon tax is nothing more than a senseless money grab. Of course, it's going to cost Canadians more than is rebated. So we've realized now that the Liberals were lying about it won't cost any more and we'll give you rebates and the rebates will pay for it. That's not happening. And Gelbo is now trying to pivot and explain that away. And here he is doing that. He says, thanks to pollution pricing rebates, average Canadians will get more back than they pay. Glad to see CTV corrected a recent headline with my comments on the subject. Government's analysis shows pollution pricing rebates put more money back into the pockets of 8 of 10 Canadians. As many economists have noted, the flaw in the PBO analysis is that averaging across income groups when the richest among us will be asked to pay more skews the average. That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. Oh, look at that. There's the Dogecoin dog. He wasn't there yesterday. Sorry, I just noticed that. Laurie Goldstein says PBO didn't just do averages. What we should worry about is the Trudeau government putting out misleading and inaccurate data, claiming 80% of families paying the carbon tax end up richer because of rebates without factoring in the negative impact of the tax on the economy. So these people are trying to do wealth redistribution, which doesn't work. And they're claiming that only the rich people are complaining. Everybody else is better off. And then when shown data that everybody else is not better off, that most people are worse off, except for the very, very poor, they ignore it and then pivot to crap like what Gobo was talking about there. So that's interesting, right? Still doubling down and saying, oh no, the averaging was wrong. The math was wrong. It's incredible. Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching. You can check out full episodes of Canada Poly every day at CanadaPoly.com. You can also go to CanadaPoly.com and pick up a ticket for a live event. The live event is taking place in Streetsville, and the location will be provided to ticket holders. But you can check out a live event. Dr. Patrick Phillips, Sarah C., and Scarlett Martin. I'm sorry, Sarah. I don't know I can't say your last name, and I'm terrible at saying last names. We'll be joining Greg Wycliffe and myself for an uncensored round table. It would be lovely if you could join us. Tickets at CanadaPoly.com. And if you live in Toronto, Mississauga, Milton, GTA, Hamilton, Guelph, Kitchener, Cambridge, it's probably well worth the drive to Streetsville. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.